So once we've got the information, once I've given you my information and things like that,
Yep.
is there a solid process behind the scenes that you guys take?
Absolutely. So yeah, once I've got all the information for the drawing, I'll then go away and I'll import that into the lighting program. So whether it be a PDF or an AutoCAD, or if I've got to draw it manually into the lighting program, once I've done that, I'll set up my calculation planes. I'll also put a line where the boundary is that's been noted, and I'll put a calculation plane on the boundary as well.
Yes.
And then I'll choose a luminaire based on what I think is the best luminaire for that job.
Yep.
And then I'll do all my calculations.
So in that you're actually taking into consideration driveways and things like that.
Absolutely, taking
and if it was a
consideration.
car park, disabled car parks and things like that.
If it's a car park, yeah, there's
lot
lots
of
of different things you've got to take into consideration.
So it's interesting you say that, because that means it's, a playing field and a car park, two totally different things.
Way totally different.
So
Yep.
where I have people and doing all the technical side of things for EMELEC, I have people saying to me, it's just like a football field. It's actually not,
No.
because the rules and regulations are vastly different.
In actual fact, football fields are fairly simple to do. Car
Yeah.
parks are a lot harder to do.
Right,
Yeah,
okay.
There's a lot more to take into consideration.
And it's interesting that we have to take into consideration disabled car parks, obviously, because of
Yep.
the room, the space, and the light they require.
Absolutely. Yep.
Okay, so we're looking at a drawing here, and I'll just remove my glasses.
So that one's been hand drawn. So obviously that's not an AutoCAD import or a PDF import. That's just a hand drawn. So that's been hand drawn into the
Yep.
system. Yep.
Okay, so, and we've got the measurements and things like off to the
Yep.
side.
Yep.
So the next one here is we're selecting a luminaire,
Yep.
and we're getting all the specifications and whatever's required.
Yep.
But what is required? Do I just pick a luminaire and say it's going at this height, or is there...
So us as designers will pick the appropriate luminaire we feel for the height that we're going to put, if there's existing poles or if there's not existing poles. And then we have to give it the light loss factor, which is the total LLF you see at 0.8 there,
Yep.
which takes into consideration depreciation of the luminaire and the chips. Right? And then once we've picked the fitting we're going to use, we define it, we add it into the drawing.
Okay, so when you're doing a design,
Yep.
we actually do take in the long-term losses of the
Absolutely,
light
yeah.
into consideration. So in 5 years' time, we know that it's going to be at a minimum of...
Correct.
Yeah,
If we say that something's 100 lux, designed to 100 lux now, it's probably in reality 120 to 130 lux
Yep.
now.
Yep.
So that at end of life it's down to 100 lux.
Yeah, which is still compliant.
Exactly right.
Yep. Okay, so what's next after? Now you've done that, you've selected the luminaire, and what happens next?
So basically I'll place the luminaires on the pole in the drawing.
Yep.
So I'll put the poles independent based on either existing where they are, how high they are. If there's nothing existing, I'll choose the light fitting based on the Australian Standard minimum recommendations.
Yep.
Then I'll place the poles, I'll place the number of luminaires and aim them. So typically on a rugby league field, it's generally 3 to 4 fittings per pole, depending on the wattage. And then I'll aim them accordingly onto the field into a pattern where I think it's going to achieve the best result. And then I'll run the calculation and see how it went.
Ah, excellent. So that's what we're looking at now. This placing the luminaire.
So that's a 3 fitting per pole installation. And you
Okay.
see they're aimed around the field to get the best result. Yeah.
Okay, so each one of those purple lines or pink
Yep.
lines are actually indicating which way each light is actually going.
Correct,
So,
yeah.
and I can notice that he's kept it well within the bounds of the field.
Yes, it's within the boundaries of the field, and the actual end of the line is where the light fitting is aimed to. And then you get the spread of light from the light fitting based on it being aimed to that point.
So it's not like a pencil torch or anything like
No,
that.
absolutely not. No.
So then we have, what do we have over here? We calculate.
Okay, so we put in a plane of calculation
Yes.
across the field, so that we've got something to calculate. Otherwise, we won't calculate anything. And that's a 5 metre by 5 metre grid across the field.
Okay.
And then we'll just run calculation, which is probably the next slide. So there you go. It tells me what we got there. So this tells me we've got 106.74 lux average, with a minimum of 59. So minimum to average uniformity is 0.55, and minimum to max uniformity is 0.32.
Okay.
So that tells me straight away that complies to Australian Standard for club competition.
Right. Oh, okay.
So if I'm assuming that drawing was done for a club competition, so that's fully compliant. with
Yeah,
Australian
that was designed for a rugby field.
What that doesn't show you is any spill that might have had to have been taken into account.
consideration?
That's just the field being illuminated to Australian standards.
Okay.
Yep.
So as we move through, this is what you were just talking about. We've designed it to the Australian standard 2560.
Point two,
and
point three.
then point 2.3, and then we've allowed for all authority inspections and things like that as well, because we have to get the local councils back in
Yep.
and they would obviously review this drawing.
So 9 times out of 10, there might be an engineer or a council involved. We'll submit the drawing to the contractor. He then will submit it to
Okay.
whoever he's doing it for approval.
And that's the average and minimum that you were talking about before.
Correct.
So we've got an average of 106, we've got a maximum of 185,
Yep.
and a minimum of 59.
So the Australian standard for sport is the min to average uniformity has to be 0.5 or better.
Yes,
And the min to max has to be 0.3 or better.
Okay.
So that's fully compliant.
that's fully compliant.
Yep.